is Eternals. Man, I cannot begin to tell you about this movie. Like, we would need like 4 hours just to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
And okay, so firstly, and we won't be talking about spoilers, I don't think. But if we do, I'll just put up this banner here on screen, so you'll know. But yeah, without going into spoilers for now, I wasn't expecting much or anticipating this movie as much, because the marketing was very um, not very hype worthy or something. The trailers were very average. We didn't get much sense of what this movie is going to be. The tone was not properly conveyed, I think. This movie mainly is a philosophical, um, deep, character driven movie, which tends to have some superhero elements in it, right? So, but it's also sci-fi, so that's there. But the trailers didn't convey that. They kind of were like your typical Marvel trailers, but there's not that much Marvel superhero stuff in the movie itself. So that didn't, you know, that wasn't conveyed well from with the trailers because they didn't have all that action and all that stuff. Although the third act is pretty good. But yeah, the trailers I think should have been better, but I think that actually did a really, um, you know, it actually did a good service for me because my expectations were really low, and I really liked the film. I thought this was very different from all the other MCU movies. Firstly, I know everybody's saying that, and that's true. And it just felt like usually in the MCU movies, they don't go that much deeper into conflicts, philosophical battles, and they don't explore them with spending time with them. They just touch upon it and just move on to the action scene and whatnot. So it's always frustrating for me at times when they do that and something of interest comes up, but then they just skip over it and don't mention it again and stuff like that. But in this movie they fully explore. um there's so much stuff that I did not expect that happened. And also the structure of the movie is pretty interesting. It keeps you engaged, even though this is kind of a slower paced film and a long film that too. And but it didn't feel boring at all to me. I thought it was brilliant, and every character was done pretty well. The chemistry is amazing. There's humor, there's heart, there's some deep stuff in it that the characters go through and throughout the journey of the movie. I mean, and it's pretty much a very grand, mythological movie that the MCU did here, and it's pretty amazing to see that. And I loved. I watched it 2 times actually, and the second time was yesterday, and I loved it even more the second time, because the first viewing there's a lot in this movie, and there's really actually a lot in this movie. Like, imagine just introducing 10 new characters with backstories, with a team up movie, and then also have additional characters to those 10 characters. So there's a lot that she had to do here, Chloe Zhao, and the movie is just for like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it was kind of an impossible task. But I really did appreciate how they did it, and I think it was done brilliantly, and the structure is pretty good. It keeps the story going very well. My favorite character, I would say, is Icarus, played by Richard Madden. He is, this is an amazing character. From the very start to the very last scene, um he just nails it. Like, every single beat he just nails it. People comparing him to Superman are kind of, I mean, people comparing and being upset that he's being compared to Superman, I think, are missing the point. They are really not alike at all, except just for the flying and the laser eyes. There's nothing
Yeah.
else that's common there. They're two completely different characters, and Icarus is definitely not a Superman ripoff. He's his own character. I thought he was very, very, very amazingly portrayed. Like every scene he was in just meant a lot to the journey of the character, and I just cannot speak enough about this character. But yeah, um, apart from him, I liked Gemma Chan's character. I liked Makari, Druig, Thena, Gilgamesh. Everyone was amazing. Even um, there's a character, there's an Indian character called Karun. He's basically a photographer for the Kumail Nanjiani character, and he's really, really
Yeah.
funny. And yeah, he's also one of the highlights. And yeah, I think every character was pretty good. The only downside to the movie I felt was that it's not long enough and it didn't explore. Okay, so they in this movie they go to the past centuries, and I thought they could have delved more into that stuff, but they didn't. Which I understand, some maybe a lot of them could get redundant and boring for people, but I would have loved to dive more into that, and I would have loved a 3 hour 15 minutes movie. But I know it's MCU. You have to keep it low, and I'm really surprised at how they even got away with like 2 hours 40 minutes. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk more about the movie in detail later. But initial thoughts, what did you think of the movie? You've seen this movie once, right?
Yeah.
So without giving away spoilers for now, what do you think of the movie?
Yeah, yeah. Look, this film is famously known for being hated by critics. The first Rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes for an MCU film, Terms, directed by Oscar winner Chloe Zhao, and the audience score is around 80s. So it's like between the audiences, the critics not so much. Half the critics, just a little bit below half. But yeah, my expectations for this film all along weren't like. Sorry, is it? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's just a little low.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So look, I didn't have much expectations for this one. In terms of because the trailers weren't amazing, the TV clips weren't amazing. It looked different from an MCU movie because it was Chloe Zhao, but I thought going into it that oh, it will just get bogged down by the MCU tropes. But overall, this is a very deeply layered film that, bar a few references towards maybe Thanos, it doesn't really take place within the MCU, even though it does, and it makes the MCU look irrelevant in terms of Thanos, the Snap, Endgame, Infinity War, because of the story that's being told right here in this one is so much more bigger and it's it's so much more important than what was going on in any of the Avenger films or Civil War or anything else. And that's what's so appealing about this movie. And characters die, yeah, and that's very rare for an MCU film that the lead characters would be killed off. Not all of them, of course, but there is stakes in this story. There is consequences for what characters do and for what they want, and it's a really great story about it. There's underlying themes about religion. There's underlying themes about what's the meaning of life, maybe, and what way you should live your life. When you Who is your maker? What would you say if you met your maker? In terms of some people believe in God, other religions have different aspects of God. So there's so many interesting concepts to discuss about this movie, and there's so much exposition, so much information that actually it's easy enough to follow along with, but it's hard maybe if you're an MCU fan because you're not used to this so much exposition. If you're someone who has just watched MCU movies for your entire life, you're probably not going to like Internals because it's so different. It feels more like it honestly it has as much exposition maybe as Dune does, in terms of what that was trying to set up. And I definitely want to see the cosmic MCU verse expanded more. I want the MCU to do their thing over there, and for Chloe Zhao to do it to her thing right here with the Eternals and the Celestians. What exactly is going on with all these characters? Because for me, this is more appealing. This is more grand than the next Avengers film for me. The Eternal character was set up perfectly. Um, there was a lot cut from this movie we've heard, but like that's going to happen anyway. It's already 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm sure that there's probably a 4 or 5 hour cut right there. But Chloe Zhao was definitely given the freedom by Kevin Feige, and Kevin Feige has talked about this movie nonstop. He is in love with this movie, And I hope that the Rotten Tomatoes score doesn't scar him in terms of wanting to make more films with Chloe Zhao in this tone, because I think if the MCU continue to do this type of film, I think there's awards potential down the line with Chloe Zhao and the Eternals if she keeps up this kind of storytelling. Maybe Eternals will get nominated for a few things, I don't know, but it just looked completely different from anything we've ever seen. Cinematography was amazing. The way characters were introduced with score or music at the end of scenes, and the ending. I don't want to give too much away, but like just watch every other MCU film and just watch how they end. This movie is just the complete opposite to any of that. Maybe the
Mhm.
closest is maybe Infinity War, but then again, I wouldn't say so. Like I would have the MCU over here, and then you would have Eternals over here on its own
Yeah.
playground because nobody else can touch it. And that's how I feel about it. And more I think about it, I think it maybe is the best MCU film because it's not like it goes completely against the MCU. It still has humor, and it's a very funny movie. And the humor isn't stupid. Actually, it's there's loads of laugh out moments with certain characters. And I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't take away the dramatic moment because when the dramatic moments come, they're dramatic. And then when they use humor, it's done very well. So I love what's that character? The massive kind of god, uh, Ursum or something
Gilgamesh?
like that.
Oh, the
No,
Celestial, the
the
Arishem.
yeah, Ursham. That character is just massive, and that character has
Mhm.
created the Eternals, and he has sent the Eternals to Earth to take on the Deviants. But then, as the story goes on, they get more of a personality because basically at the start they're just these kind of beings that are sent there to protect Earth. But then they pick up on cultures and they gain a personality. They meet people, and then they're shaped into the people that we meet in the movie. And as the film goes on, they realize where they came from, and then they realize actually why they were created and stuff like that. And that moment right there was like, wow, that's pretty heavy. And then the ending to the movie, when you think, oh, let's all go off into the sunset, it never ever went back to the MCU trope for me at all. The formula in terms of let's set up and it sets up new movies and spin-offs and stuff, but this could be its own thing, its own universe, and not even relate to Captain America or Iron Man or any of those characters or Thor. It doesn't have to meet those characters. I don't want them to meet
Yeah.
these characters. I think what she's doing here is fantastic. And there's two post-credit scenes, and I thought the second one was amazing. Love that one. And the first one, I'm not too gone on the actor, but he might be perfect for the MCU and what they're trying to do. But yeah, the Eternals is fantastic. Definitely check it out. And yeah, I definitely can't wait to see it again. And this is a heavy film. There's so much in it, so much, and you can definitely relate. Like there's 10 Eternals or something like that. You'll definitely relate to one or two of them, if not more. And I think that's an important thing the MCU to do is to have these grounded elements in terms of characters that you can relate to. Because it's very hard to relate to someone like like Thor or any of these characters. Even though Thor's a god, the Eternals are even bigger than what Thor is, and the Eternals are more grounded than any of the other MCU heroes that we've seen before,
It
which is
is, yeah. Crazy.
weird. It's
Yeah.
weird that the MCU. I'm surprised this movie was let be made. To be honest,
Yeah.
really surprised, really surprised. But um, Kevin Feige trusted his filmmaker. He brought her in, and she did a fantastic job, and he stood by her. When a similar thing happened at DC a few years ago, they didn't. So, and I don't think Kevin Feige will be as a reactionary as Warner Bros. Were.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.